Recording on this computer. Okay. Recording. We're good.
All right.
All right, folks, welcome in. My name is Henish Pulickal. I'm the CEO of CalHomeCo Construction, and I've got on with me my guest and friend, Kara West.
Hey. Excited to finish.
Hey, welcome on. So today we wanted to spend some time going over a quick webinar on ADUs, what they are, why they're so important, who we are, how we can help you with this, because we get a lot of questions on this. And we both have ADUs behind our properties, and we've both helped several clients get these for their houses as well. And so we couldn't be better advocates for this. So that's kind of what our background is and why we're doing this, because people ask us a bunch of questions, and typically I'll say, hey, let's check out this webinar. Let me know what other questions you have. And it saves me about 30 minutes of Q&A when we do this initially, right?
Absolutely.
Well, cool. So let's do this. And I've done a few versions of this, so I'm hopefully getting a little bit better at this every time. So let's dive right into it. So intro, first off, CalHomeCo is my company. We're a real estate investment and construction company. And the construction company is what we'll be focusing on today. My construction team, these are the primary managers, including co-owners, Blake and TJ. This is Blake here on the bottom of the stairs and TJ here in the middle. Our co-owners with me, and they both have huge amounts of experience in construction versus me. I don't have as much construction experience, but I've been in this industry since 2002. And then Chris has also got several years experience as a project manager and lead estimator. And he's kind of our initial person that clients speak with and talk with and engage with, and he helps put together the estimates with our review. And so we've made it our mission to be known as the ADU go-to contractors in San Diego. We do take on other work from remodels to additions, but ADUs are what we love and we're passionate about. And so we've kind of made that our brand. Additionally, we're also a veteran-owned business. Blake is still a reserve officer with the Navy.
Awesome.
We use lots of good forward-thinking software, including CoConstruct, which allows clients to get our estimates in detailed format, allows visibility throughout the projects in terms of timeline, accounting, change orders, material selection, product selection, and any kind of other communication. So there's not a lot of questions of what's going on, how come that is happening. It's logged into the system. It's a super good system for us, and our clients have given us great feedback on that. Additionally, our website's a pretty good resource. You can see pictures of completed ADUs. And if you want to become a client with us, we can send you a lot more on our Google Drive, along with the references and testimonials about working with us. We take a lot of pride in treating clients great, also being on time with our construction, on budget, and having a good experience that they can be proud of, because we live off of referrals. We only work here in San Diego. We're not a marketing company. We're licensed general contractors, and we do our best to do a good job of that. So with that, Kara, I'll pass it over to you. Tell us a little bit about yourselves.
Great. Thanks, Henish. So my name is Kara West. I am a residential lender, which means that, I'm on the financing side. So I like to talk money. I like to talk numbers. American Pacific Mortgage is a great company, licensed here in California, and we're one of the top lenders when it comes to your home purchase or your home refinance or any type of residential loan, which is why we are talking about this today with ADUs. So next slide, Henish. Just a little bit here. Process is super smooth and easy with me. I like to make, the process seems daunting to a lot of people when you're getting into finances. That doesn't need to be the case. You can get on your mobile phone, you can do a few clicks, and we can get right into an application. There's really simplified website to go to. So again, the process with financing doesn't have to be hard. And I'm just a phone call away to make that really easy. So show that on the next slide. One of the great things about working with a lender that's already been through the ADU process is that they know all of the ups and downs to it. So this is actually my own ADU that I've got in my backyard. I built this last year and I love it. It was really great. And I actually went through a refinance process to be able to finance it. So not only have I been on, the lending side and doing this for my own clients, but I've been on the borrower side and the building side, which is it was really fun. It was really exciting. So definitely going to bring that lens to it with any of the clients we're working with.
Well, I applaud you for doing such bold design and colors because it came out great and it shows off awesome. And obviously, when you rented it out, right? This is an investment ADU for you, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. I started off with this single family home. I went through an FHA loan, had very little equity, was only to put down 3.5%. But, over the years in San Diego, very quickly built up that home equity just because home values went up. I was able to tap into that to then build this. And now this is paying for 80% of my mortgage. So
Wow.
I definitely smile every time I walk my dog by our backyard and I see that up there. It makes me very happy to know that I've invested in my own equity and it's definitely been a big support.
I'm just going to say that one more time because someone might have missed it, but your ADU pays for 80% of your housing cost.
It does.
Okay, just
It
making
does.
sure. Because at mine, it's almost the same. It pays for about 60% of my housing cost.
It's definitely something to laugh and smile about. That's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so what is an ADU? So an ADU stands for technically an accessory dwelling unit, right? And that's kind of the government terminology for a granny flat or a companion unit or a guest house or casita, called, all these different terms. But basically, it means an additional living unit on your property that you could rent out to someone else, or someone could live there because it's got its own kitchen, it's got its own bathroom, it's got its own separate entrance. It could be attached to your property. It could be detached. And these are just pictures of some of the ADUs that we've done in the background. I know our headshots are kind of blocking some of that one, but these are just garage conversions. This is a standalone 2-bedroom, 860 square feet. The one here, this is the rooftop at my ADU in Pacific Beach. So as we mentioned, there's different varieties of these. So you can build them detached from your property, attached to your property. You could convert your garage. You could do something above your garage. And if you're fortunate enough to have a big enough basement here in San Diego, you might as well turn your basement into one. So whatever you think, it's the key thing with this is that if you don't know whether you could build one on your property, the answer is yes, you probably can. So don't think you can't because the lot's too small, or because you looked into it 10 years ago and you couldn't, because the laws have changed. And that's why this is exciting, because in 2017, laws changed to change it from less than 5% of all the housing stock in California to be approved for an ADU to now nearly 100% of homes would qualify. Even if you're in an HOA, even if you have cranky neighbors, it doesn't matter. You can build an ADU.
Yeah.
So restrictions, starting this year, starting in earlier 2020, anything new that's detached has to have solar, right? So there are square footage requirements. It's typically 150 square feet on the small side, up to 1,200 square feet. There are different rules on setbacks and parking restrictions depending on where you are, but it's also very possible that you could build an ADU without having any additional parking in most parts of town. And even if it's an investment property for you, if it's not your primary residence, you can still build ADUs. Almost every time someone asks, can I do this or can I do that? The answer is almost always yes. So that's the good news. The key is to kind of figure out what exactly makes sense and what your goals are, right? Different people build these things for different reasons. Sometimes they build it to house family, and sometimes they build it to create rental income or offset their primary housing cost, as you and I have done, where you're getting 80% of your mortgage paid for by your rental property on your property, right? So the opportunity came about a few years ago because for many, many, many years, we've had a huge housing crisis in California where we're short on units. Even in San Diego, I think the numbers were short like 15,000 units per year that we're not building based on the demand that we've got. And so as a result, we've got a super unhealthy vacancy rate, right? So that's why if you have a nice place for rent, you're getting 3 to 4 applications a day, if not more, for someone trying to rent it. And so we need a lot more housing for people, especially smaller, affordable housing like this that's infill, right? These are in good areas, right? And they're not building new developments in the neighborhoods where you live. And Carrie, you said you lived in North Park?
I actually live in the College Grove area near San Diego State.
Okay.
I will agree with you, though. I mean, as far as applications go, I saw an overwhelming number. I couldn't even respond to the demand that I saw. I think in the first week, we had over 50 applications, inquiries, really.
Yeah.
I mean, it allows you to be able to really vet the renters too. So when you have such high demand, being able to be selective in who you choose to get into the property is also a really great benefit.
So hopefully your renters are still paying even with COVID going on.
They are, we live in a military town. So you mentioned VA, and there are a lot of I had a lot of interested renters from the Navy. So they do have a housing allowance often. So that is a nice benefit as well when you know that they have that secured housing allowance coming in to pay the mortgage, the rent, and then my
Excellent.
mortgage.
Yeah. Their rent, your mortgage. Yeah, that's how it works.
Exactly.
So lots of incentives that are still going on right now. Primarily, there's lower development fees with building these units. Typically, prior to these new bills passing, you would have had to pay anywhere from $11,000 to $17,000 extra in just permits and fees to build an extra unit. So now that fee's gone way down, and now to get a permit for an ADU is anywhere from $4,000 to $6,000 on average. Previously, it would have been well over $20,000. So huge savings there, which means that they're really trying to incent you to build these things because the city and the state know that we have a housing crisis. So lots of different reasons to do this, right? To help your own family, whether it's age in place for your parents that might be older than you, or maybe you have adult children that need a place to live, or just any other family or friends that you need to help with housing. Additionally, you could rent it out as we're doing. It also increases your equity. It helps your community out because you're allowing extra housing, and most communities can manage the extra density, whether or not you have a cranky neighbor that disagrees, right? They're usually, you're only accommodating 1 to 2 more people typically in these units. And so you're not getting a flood of cars or people that are throwing big parties because they're smaller units. You just don't have the space to accommodate a big fraternity party or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I just add one more there, Henish, is that, that now that so many are working from home, I'm actually working from home this whole last year. I think a lot of who are going to be interested in these units for, having a place that feels like they're not in their bedroom, or in their home office. They're able to actually go out to another unit, have a little bit of distance and work from home. So it gives a lot of flexibility for homeowners.
Yeah, absolutely. No, there's lots of different benefits for it. And the key thing is that this is such a key investment because you already own the land. You're not having to buy the land. And in San Diego, that's half the price of buying a house is the land acquisition. So if you already own the land and you can give up a little bit of airspace or some space on the alley or, wherever you've got some space in your lot, there's a way to squeeze an extra unit in there. Even if it's only 200 or 300 or 400 square feet, that could help out another person live there and help you out significantly with your mortgage.
Yeah, exactly.
So just very rough numbers. We'll kind of dive into this a little bit more. But if you build a unit for $250,000, which you could comfortably use to build a 2-bedroom unit, the rent is at least $2,400 a month, right? Probably more than that for a brand new 2-bedroom unit. Your principal and interest, taxes, insurance, the PITI may only be about $1,400. But every way I break this out, you typically cash flow at least $1,000. And just on rough numbers, I don't want to give promises or guarantees, but on rough numbers, this is how it works out, if not better. What do you think, Kara? Does that sound about right?
Absolutely. I think that's a conservative estimate.
Yeah, super conservative estimate. So I'm not selling you something that's juicier than it is. It's at least this juicy, if not juicier.
Yeah.
Common question that I get when this happens is, hey, what's this do to my property value? And the answer every time is that it increases your property value. Now, the question is, does it increase it dollar for the amount that you spend to build it? And most times the answer is significantly more, right? So Sydney with South Shore Appraisals helped me with this segment a few months ago, and I'm just going to steal his slides, giving him full credit. If you need an appraiser that needs that can help you with your valuations on your ADUs, he's the guy to go to because he knows how this works. And there's 2 different ways to calculate this, right? Sales comparison, finding other properties in your neighborhood that have sold that have a similar extra unit, and the income approach in terms of how much your unit rents for and using what's called a gross rent multiplier. I'll dive into this a little bit. He does a much better job of me because he's a licensed appraiser with experience, and I'm just the guy that knows this stuff a little bit. So the sales comparison approach, he's looking for similar properties and saying, hey, a block over, there's a very similar house with the guest house and it sold for this much. That's probably what your house is worth, right? So he's got some other information there. It's got to be conforming, which means it's built right, it looks right, it's functional, and it's acceptable and it's marketable. It can be sold, right? So you've got something that someone would want because it's marketable. And as you and I know, any house that says they have an ADU on it flies off the shelf at a super premium anywhere in San Diego.
Absolutely.
Additionally, the gross rent multiplier, the income approach, is kind of like when you're doing an investment property and you're figuring out 2 units on a single lot or more, because you can do junior ADUs too. So you're looking on the potential income and you're using the gross rent multiplier, the GRM, to figure out what your values are. So here's a case study of a property that he did in Santee. Kind of shows that the income lost without the ADU would have been $300,000. And that kind of explains the delta in the values of the property, right? So this property came to about $750,000. It probably would have been worth about $450,000 without the ADU. Another example in Cardiff, 2,400 square foot main house, 700 square foot side house, granny flat ADU. And that ADU, he's saying rents for, how much does that rent for? Granny flat rents for $2,500 for a 700 square foot ADU, probably a little conservative for that. And so he's saying in this case, that ADU is worth $625,000, even though it would have cost less than $250,000 to build. So big return on investment in terms of the instant equity that you get. But with the cash flow, maybe you're not building it to sell it. You want to build it to use it, right? So lots of value there. So if you're thinking long-term, yes, it will help your property value. So the process for getting started, so basically you're saying, hey, this looks good. Let's get started. Effectively, we do a site study. It says $249, but we'll do this most times for free. Sometimes it depends on the complexity, but we can get out there and figure out what your setbacks are. Are there easements? Where can we build? Can we do what you're asking us to do? And so we'll typically figure that out for free for you guys to say, yep, it seems possible. Let's get started. And then we go from there, right? So this is kind of the site study. We do a site visit, figure out what your goals are, and go from there. Second, it's drafting and permits. So in our case, we have a design and a build contract. So the design build contract allows you to just sign a contract that says, hey, get my plans ready, get my plans approved. And then I have a workable product in terms of a roll of paper that are plans for this building or digital files, in most cases, that then you can then bid out to other people if you want to, if you don't want to continue using us. That's never happened, but we give you that option so you don't feel you're locked in with us if you're spending $10,000 to get plans done. Right.
I think that's a really great point, Henish. Not a lot of people have that flexibility when they're looking at, getting bids and trying to go through all of the process. It seems really daunting. So the fact that CalHomeCo is doing that, I think, is a great benefit.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's kind of the difference between having a prolonged dating experience before you get married, as opposed to saying, hey, married on first sight, which is spend $250,000 with me and I'll build you something, I promise. Versus you get to spend a few months with us, work with us as we build your plans, get to know us, get to know the personalities, and make sure that we get along, because you're going to have to deal with us for another 4 or 5, 6 months to build this thing for you.
That's great.
Next up after that, after the design plan, is the construction plan. Is from those design plans that we've made for you, we can now do a detailed estimate. Prior, we'll do a detailed proposal, because prior we'll do an estimate saying, hey, based on our experience and based on the size and scope of your project, it'll cost this amount of money. But now when we're working through the design process, we'll work with the designers or the architects to make sure that they're creating the plans that stay within your budget. If you have a fixed budget, you might not be able to afford super expensive features like metal roofs and La Cantina windows and jacuzzi tubs and stuff like that. Keeping that in mind, we can then design to your budget and then make sure that you have a detailed proposal that goes over all the things that are included and excluded. So there's no surprises of, hey, I thought you were putting in $2,000 ceiling fans when we put in an allowance for $200 ceiling fans, right? So stuff like that there's no confusions on. We've built ADUs for less than $200 a foot, and we just got a contract signed right now for an ADU that's costing $500 a square foot, because it's a super high-end 400 square foot for mother-in-law with a metal roof, with La Cantina doors, real wood surfaces everywhere. And it was just expensive. It's just what it costs. So the rule of thumb is the bigger the structure, the less the cost per square foot, because it's economy of scale. Things like kitchens and bathrooms and HVAC systems are expensive, but they cost the same amount in a small house as they do in the big house, roughly, depending on the size, right?
Makes sense.
So construction timelines are roughly anywhere from 4 to 6 months. So 16 to 24 weeks. We typically fall within that budget depending on weather delays or material delays or any other unforeseen circumstances. But for the most part, we get it done on time. And usually it's a month or so early, and clients are pretty happy with that.
Awesome.
Plans, this kind of just a zoom in scan of a plan that we have just to kind of show, hey, why plans cost a few $1,000s or more, because they're having to do all this detail in terms of the measurements, in terms of the lighting plan, where the doors are, where the appliances are. And this takes someone that's professionally trained to be able to do this properly, that makes sure that you've got walkways that work, and properly designed small spaces can feel like a bigger space, right? My ADU is 875 square feet, and people always say, why does this feel so much bigger than 875 square feet? And the truth is because it was designed properly. And I'm assuming you have the same thing at yours too, right, Carol? How big?
Yeah, absolutely. It does not feel, it's only 576 square feet, but it feels pretty huge. We have massive ceiling heights.
You got big ceilings, you got big windows.
Right.
And
Like
so that, and that makes it feel like it's a lot bigger, not as claustrophobic as what 576 square feet feels like.
Yeah, definitely.
So getting a good design, costs money, but it's worth it because that can make the difference on your finished product. You can kind of see some pictures of us framing in the garage door of a garage conversion over in Claremont. So you can see there's a little bit of lumber involved, some saw cuts, and there's guys working there, and it takes a little bit of wood to put together. Additionally, you can see the framing on the inside. The owners wanted vaulted ceilings instead of the flat ceilings and beams that were in the garage. So we had to redo the entire roof structure to accommodate that vaulted ceiling so that it had that bigger space feel, because this is about 400 some square feet in this place. And then people are always shocked that, these things can cost. Garage conversion on average is about $100,000 for us, but there's a lot of wood in there, and you can see all the rough electrical being run through. And that's not, a $20,000 job. And this is why it's $100,000, because it's done right. It's framed up properly. This is a real structure that's permitted, and built to code. Same with plumbing. You can see all the saw cuts here to place the sewer lines. Otherwise, if you don't mind a step-up bathroom, it looks kind of hokey. But if you want it done properly and you get the return on investment, if you ever sell the property down the line, you know that the plumbing's done right. It's all flush flooring, because you got stacks to the shower over here, the toilet over here, the sink over here, and to the right, you've got the stack washer and dryer, right? So it's all in this nice bathroom, but it takes cutting a lot of concrete, laying a lot of pipe to be able to accommodate that. So not cheap, but it's done right. Design is also helpful, not just for the plans, but in terms of how you design your actual unit. If you're going to be renting it out, especially if you rent it out furnished, this can be a useful service. I'm in the process of remodeling my primary residence right now, and I've currently hired a designer, and it makes a world of difference, because you and I are good at the things that we're good at, but maybe we're not good at the things we're not good at. And so design is definitely not one of my fortes. I know what I like, but putting pen to paper and drawing out where cabinets should go and what kind of light fixtures I should use is out of my scope personally. So overall cost, as we discussed, feasibility anywhere from free to $249. Permits and drafting can be $10,000 to $30,000. Construction anywhere from 200 to 350 square feet on average. And design, $3 a square foot. And then all gets done within 9 months, worst case, 12 months. So 3 to 4 months for designs and permits, and 4 to 6 months for construction. Give a couple months buffer for anything else, maybe including financing. So cost breakdown. So we kind of just went over that. And so renovation loans, Kara, I'll let you take care of this.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Henish. So, speaking of money, obviously cash is king. So if somebody has that cash sitting in their bank account and they're ready to, start the process with Henish, go for it. You're not going to pay any interest, but you might not want to throw all that cash at something. You might want to look at, your other options, maybe put that in another investment. So there are definitely lending options out there for ADUs. There's a lot of flexibility. I won't get into all of the nitty gritty, bore everybody on this webinar with that, but needless to say, if you are interested in what options would be best for you, best way is just to call me. We can go through. There's a lot of different programs. You could do a cash out refinance if you have that equity built up. There's also different FHA loans available depending on the amount that you want to take out, a little streamlined process. So it's not going to be something that's huge and daunting. FHA is great as well. Like it says here, there's flexible credit, depending on your background, on your credit check, all of that, there might be some more flexibility that we can put in the room there for you. As far as, using your rent to qualify, this is one of the really cool things about a lot of financing products out there, is that we can actually use your future potential income off of that rental to qualify you for that bigger loan. So, you may say, oh, well, I don't have the income. I just got this house. I know that I qualified at this. It was hard to get to that max level. How am I going to get above that? Well, your rent is your income. So we're going to take that into account. We're going to, use those numbers, and you might be able to qualify for a larger loan amount than you had previously. So definitely some different opportunities out there. Again, there's, depends on the person, depends on the product, depends on the circumstances. I'd actually say the interest rates right now, Henish, are actually a little lower. We're in a boom right now, post-COVID, well, during COVID, but as soon as COVID hit in March, the rates just plummeted. So we are at an all-time low as far as interest rates go. And I would say that, if you can get your rate down to somewhere in the twos, amazing. I'm personally at a 2.5 right now. So, those are out there. But I say you'd be looking around at a 3 to 4 for your range for this.
Yeah, because construction financing a little bit more expensive. But one key thing that people might not realize is that you might think you don't have any equity in your home, but that might not matter, because these loan products might use your after construction value.
Absolutely. Yep.
Right.
That home style loan right there, it's going to take that after the appraisal value of when it's all done and said and done. So when you're adding that back, when you look at those slides where you're adding all of that value, those hundreds of thousands of dollars over, we're going to be able to tap into that pricing to be able to increase your options.
Huge. Yeah. So that's a key thing. If you don't think you have the money, or if you don't think you have the equity, surprise, you might actually have the money and the equity to do so, especially if you already own a house. This is a pretty good no-brainer.
Absolutely.
Okay, return on investment. We kind of tapped into this a little bit earlier. If you're building 1,000 square foot ADU, it's about $250 a square foot. So you pay $250,000 to build one of these things, and you rent it out for $2,500 a month. Monthly payments about $1,500 just for that portion of your mortgage, and you're cash flowing about $1,000 a month, right? So annually, it could be $30,000 a year, and you're building equity, right? The $30,000 a year is the $2,500 a month times 12. So huge amounts there, and we'll kind of dig into this a little bit more. I like this slide. You can get construction, or you can get cars, or you can get houses at all kinds of different prices. Obviously, if you pay a little bit more, you get lower stress, and there's kind of a sweet spot of how much you want to spend versus how much stress you want. Because some people are like, no way, I'm going to do this all myself. And, they're pulling their hair out after 2 years of working on this, versus hiring someone. We know all the right subs. We know where to get the materials from. We know we can get this done properly, and not have any issues with inspectors as people are going through to make sure that framing and electrical and plumbing are done right. We get that done right the first time because we know what we're doing.
Mm-hmm. And I'd say, Henish, being through that experience myself, sometimes paying that extra cost up front to not have that headache is actually going to save you more money in the long run, because then your process isn't drawn out. So if we know that we're going to be generating that income from renting it off right away, then cost benefit analysis might just make more sense to get it done the sooner than later.
Correct. Yeah. So this quote that I've got here has been true more times than not. I've had clients call me back and saying, oh, we picked a contractor that said they were $10,000 cheaper than you guys, and now we're 3 months into it. Now they're saying that's going to be $50,000 more than your bid. And I'm like, it's hard for us to go back and fix someone else's bad work. But we're bidding properly from the get-go, instead of trying to surprise you with change orders because of our mistakes later on. And now you're kicking yourself that you got tricked again by a contractor. And unfortunately, there's been a lot of that. And so I'm always doing these webinars and meeting with people to try to overcome those objections of the nightmare stories they might have had in the past. So the tax strategy gets extra compelling, especially if you've never owned an investment property before. You might not know some of this stuff. We're going to do some assumptions here so you can kind of understand how beneficial this can be from a tax standing. So say you've got an $800,000 property, which includes a $600,000 primary residence, which you live in, and a $200,000 ADU. And then I've got the square footage is broken out here as well. Rent of $20.60, which is kind of the average for a 2-bedroom in San Diego, which obviously is extremely low because we know that a 2-bedroom doesn't rent for that much anymore. But I wanted to give conservative numbers so people can say, oh, I know rents in my neighborhood are higher than that. So if you write off the expenses, and this is kind of tax strategy that you could talk to your CPA or your accountant about to double check my numbers. I'm not a tax specialist, but I do understand this a little bit because I do it for myself, and I kind of game plan it with my clients a little bit as well. You can write off your expenses, right? Which is your mortgage interest. You can write off your taxes. You can write off your utilities and maintenance. And that might be $4,400 a month. If your ADU is 30% the size of your total building, 30% of $4,400 a month is $1,300. So now you're writing off almost $16,000 a month in annual expenses for just your ADU. And then there's depreciation and cost segregation. So interestingly enough, instead of just depreciating your entire asset over 27 and a half years, you can break out the components of your ADU, which depreciate at a faster time frame per the IRS guidelines, right? Your whole building might be good for 27 and a half years, but maybe the furniture is only good for 5, not maybe. That's what the IRS says. The IRS says your furniture is good for 5. Your fixtures, your light fixtures, your plumbing fixtures, et cetera, are good for 7. And land improvements, which could include landscaping or irrigation or concrete around your building, could be worth 15. So what you can get is a cost segregation report, right? And so some of the more advanced accountants and CPA firms will do a cost segregation report on your property, break out these numbers for you, make it audit proof for the IRS, and say, okay, now we're going to write off $1,000 a month instead of the total amount here divided by 27 and a half years, which could be a very low number. We're now getting almost double that by depreciating the fixtures, furnitures, and land improvements at the higher rates because they're depreciated faster. So now we said gross rent's $2,000 a month, operating expenses, which is the mortgage interest, utilities, and expenses, came to $1,300 plus depreciation at $1,000. You're actually saying that you're losing $300 a month. So now in your tax returns, you can write off $3,600, even though you're keeping all that cash. So here's your $3,600 cash. You're making $24,700 a year. You get your tax savings of this $3,657, which is kind of maybe an assumption of 30% of your loss is your tax rate, $1,100 back. So your income plus your savings, you're now at a 12.9 cap rate on this extremely conservative estimate.
That's amazing.
So a 12.9 cap rate for those that aren't investors is extraordinarily high. These are the kind of numbers that people talk about when they're investing in places like Tennessee or Arkansas and hoping that they have good renters. Versus having something right there in your backyard here in California, where typically properties trade at a 4% cap rate. So this is more than triple the local prevailing cap rate for trading investment properties. So in terms of cash
wow
flow,
number.
What's that?
That's a wow number.
It's a wow number. And if people don't understand this, I'm sure you and I are happy to explain this to them in further detail. And please confirm those numbers with your CPA because it is that good. It is that good. And so cash flow is 37%, which is also a huge number, right? Because you're making $24,700 a year. Your expenses were $15,600. And so net of your expenses, excluding these tax benefits, you're still taking home $9,000 a year. So pretty exciting stuff. I mean, that's basically our presentation. What do you think, Kara?
I'm excited. I think this is a great opportunity for homeowners in San Diego. I'm glad that you're putting all of this out there, Henish, because when I did it felt like a no-brainer. I know that a lot of my neighbors were interested as well as soon as they saw it going up. So I think this is going to be a real benefit to homeowners going forward.
Yeah. So with this, the key things that we're trying to get over is one, yes, you can, it's unfortunate if you've had a bad experience with a contractor before, less likely with a bad mortgage broker, but now you've got two of the good ones here that can do these things properly. And we have a good reputation. We're here to stay for a long time. I'm not a fly-by-night company. I've got wife and kids here and we're planning to stay forever because San Diego is one of the best places in the world. And same with my company, right? We're all here to deepen our roots into the community and give back as much as possible. And we think ADUs are a great way to do that. And it can be extremely compelling in multiple different ways to accommodate your family, to be an investment goal, to increase the equity in your property for your tax strategies, et cetera, building generational wealth. It's all these kind of subtle benefits that come from being a landlord and having rental properties that could be super useful, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd say, don't think it's too hard. Don't say, oh, I can't do that, or just pick up the phone, have a conversation with Henish, have a conversation with me, get the ball rolling. Even if you don't end up working, with either of us at the end of the day, I think it's taking that first step to actually dream, and then put your dream into reality. And
yeah, we can walk you through the rest of it. And there's lots of things that both you and I do that we're not experts in, but that's why we call up the experts, right? You call up someone that's
absolutely.
good at it, put a little faith in them, do some homework, check out their references, make sure that they are who they say they are and they can execute the way they can. And then once that's done, you got to let the process work. And then it comes out the back end. And all of our clients have been ecstatic with the results. And fortunately, we keep getting calls from their referrals saying, hey, we built my neighbor's ADU. Could you build ours? And so I love those calls.
Yeah, or knocks on the door, what I get too. How'd you do that? I want to start that process. So
Awesome. Well, Kara, thanks for spending some time with me and recording this webinar. I'm sure it'll be useful to a lot of people. So with that, don't hesitate to contact either of us, and we'll leave it at that.
all right. Bye, everybody.